All right, so I started recording and welcome to this is the Love Connection course from Mia Sains, and I'm Reverend Meghan Smith Brooks to be your guest instructor today. And we're going to be talking about living life as legacy. And it's one of those things that are really near and dear to my heart, to a part of my life, and what I have learned from the grief process, surprisingly, of how important it is and how we view our life. So I want to welcome each of you, and I appreciate that you're muted. I hope there's a time where we might have some conversation. And if you feel like showing yourself visually, I would love to see your faces. I understand many of you come in from a workplace, and so it's not an option. But so I understand that, and we will work with whatever the situation is. You know, it's interesting that even before I began my grief experience and learned about the importance of legacy, and I don't know how many of you have been to my previous courses through the Love Connection, but I just talked about grief and the meaning of it and the importance of understanding it. And last time I had my friend Terry Wilder join, who's a sound healer, and offered her gongs, and we did a really deep feel to heal meditation to go into the pain of grief and all of that, so that we can bring it out and regurgitate it and begin to realize the gift in it. So I'm not going to go and redo that piece, but I want to remind you the the importance of honoring your feelings, to really feel them deeply, especially the most painful ones, the ones that we want to avoid. Because in our avoidance, we're avoiding learning something about ourselves. We're avoiding learning something that could be a gift that could enhance who we are and broaden our experience in life. And that's when we begin to see how living a legacy and intentionally how we choose to live is important. So my background is I have 25 years, well, actually it's 26 years now, we're in a new year, experience as a spiritual educator. I'm an ordained unity minister, a grief coach, and the author of Unraveling Grief, a mother's spiritual journey of healing and discovery that is available in paperback and Kindle on Amazon.com. And today I'm going to use some of the exercises that I talk about in the healing process. So we're coming out from having gone through the depth of the pain, and how do we move forward to live our life with meaning, intention, and purpose, despite the things that have happened in our lives, because of the things, the challenging, painful losses of life that we've experienced. And I remember that I actually had started with some intentions of that many decades before I experienced the most traumatic, um, painful loss when my 29-year-old son, Justin, was murdered in 2013. And so I understand the depth of pain. I also understand the depth of how we can still find meaning and live intentionally, and find ways to make a difference in the world. Doesn't mean that we have to be rich and famous. It doesn't mean that anybody has to know what we're doing, but it's how I live that is setting a ripple effect, is setting an impact in emotion to make a difference because I exist. I remember um, probably it's been over 30 years ago, but the book by Stephen Covey that came out, I think like maybe 1889, no, not 1989, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Maybe some of you are aware of that. And one of the habits that had the greatest impact that really got my attention was number 2, the one that said um, something to the effect of start with the end in mind. And he led you through this exercise of imagining that you were observing your own funeral or memorial service, that you had died, and you were listening to what other people were saying about your life, the impact that you had had on them. And at that time, I was coming through a very painful divorce from an abusive relationship. My boys were were really little still. And I had started my spiritual education and exploration, was really looking at transforming my life, and I was taking courageous steps to make a difference. So this caught my attention. If at the end of my life, and people were talking about me, what would I want them to say about who I am? How would I want to have touched their lives? And so bringing that forward now, I realized that was the same revelation I had as I was coming through navigating the process of deep, profound, heartbreaking grief. That I began to realize that I'm still here, I'm still breathing, I'm still moving forward, and I have a life before me. How do I want to live? And the exercise that I did last time was coming out of the Feel to Heal experience, was to begin to recognize, what can I be grateful for even in the midst of my loss? How can I embrace and be willing to realize that the precious memories of the love that I mourn are the gift that's always embedded in my heart, that can never be taken from me, and that as I honor those that have come before me, there's something that they've offered to me as a gift that's their legacy of life. And so I would like you to start thinking about whether there's somebody that you have lost that you're mourning, if it's recent, if it's in the past, maybe there's more than one person, but to pick the one that has had the most impact of loss in your life. And to begin to think about, how do they live their life? What are the things that you deeply admired about them? The things that touched you in a significant way? The things that made a difference, and that those are the things you miss the most about their presence. Those things and how they live their life are their legacy to you. It's like their last will and testament of their presence that they've offered to you. Can you begin to see what a tremendous and beautiful gift that is? And so as we begin to move forward in our life, to realize that I am creating a living legacy that I offer to those as I leave my body, as I leave this experience. And what would I want to have been said about me? What would I want them to have realized that I have offered them something of value that they could use to integrate into their life because I existed? And so as I, think about those things, my husband's father is 103 years old. He does live in assisted living, though he didn't move there until maybe 4.5 years ago, after his wife passed. And, I think about him and who he is and how he shows up. And he has this great gift for humor. He's always been one to tell the joke, not always appropriate, sometimes a little off color, but yet he looks to find something of humor, and we always expect that from him. And I think this is a great gift because it allows us to laugh about the foibles of life, the difficulties in life, and to find something to, laughter is like a way of loosening things up. It's a very healing vibration that we can offer ourselves. And so I see that that's a legacy that he's going to offer his family when he leaves his life. When I think about my son, Justin, who, he was this bright light. He lived life on the edge. He was gregarious and had this infectious laugh and smile. And yet, he had a challenged life. He had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and went through chemotherapy when he was 18. He had a very abusive father and had a difficulty in processing anger issues. He struggled with addictions, both drugs and alcohol. And yet, his greatest gift for him was that he was able to have a daughter, and he loved living life through her. And when I look at what he offered me, it was because he lived on the edge in a way that it was like he didn't know if he would have a future. That's what the cancer did for him. So he lived in the moment without even realizing it. He was courageous. He pushed the limits of the boundaries of his experience. He was fearless in a lot of ways. And so when I sat with thinking about what did my son offer me, it was courage. It was living fearlessly. It was not waiting for some day in the future, but taking the bull by the horn, so to speak, and having the courage to step into unexplored boundaries now, to do the things that I've always wanted to do without procrastinating now. And as I do that, I honor him. I honor his life. And he continues to live through me as I've had the courage to live life in new and more creative and adventurous ways. So think about those things that you admire about those that have gone before you. Maybe you want to write those down, capture those in a moment. The legacy gifts that you admire, that you want to emulate in your life from those that have been an important presence in your life. And as we begin to recognize those things, they begin to trigger how I want to shift, change, transform my life now in a courageous way that I may not have done had I not had this loss. What are some of those things? You know, if you want to open your microphone and share some of those things, if there's something that just, you know, an aha that you thought of as something that you admired that you would want to add into your life to enhance who you are. Does anybody have any of those things you would like to share? Well, there's somebody in the chat here. Oh, I understand. No problem, Carol. I appreciate everyone that's checked in, even when you're, you know, at work and you're not able to be fully present with camera and audio. So if you want to put in the chat, even if there's some thoughts that you have of some of the things that you admired of those that you mourn, that you miss their presence, but it's something that they have left for you as their legacy. So if anybody brings up anything, I'll just go ahead and share it. But so how do we move forward in doing that? How do we begin? I'm making Easter baskets for people last night, and I was thinking about my mother making creative Easter baskets for me and how she did things with love and grace and creativity, yes. And so maybe without even knowing it, you're already using her gift as you're creating Easter baskets as a tradition that honors what she taught you, what you experienced and loved with her. So that's a beautiful example that maybe you can realize now is that's a way that you're honoring her and you're creating your own legacy for your children, your grandchildren, those people that you may be sharing your Easter baskets with without even realizing it. You're already beginning to live your own legacy. See, as we begin to shift how we live our life, add one more person's coming in, as we begin to recognize the value of our life, then we recognize the value of how we live each day. So I'm going to go ahead and mute. Make sure you're all muted so that we don't have any carryover sound. That we can shift out of the pain that we may be still fearing. Because, you know, the triggers of pain of loss still happen in life. And they come oftentimes unexpectedly. Sometimes we even know ahead of time, you know, a birthday, an anniversary, a holiday, those things are going to get triggered. But we can intentionally plan for them. We can plan on how we're going to manage it. And if we have go-to things to think about, like precious memories and how I love someone, so how can I honor them in this moment? How can I honor them in how I live my life? Then I can completely transform every area of my life as creating my own living will and testament. Have you thought about living life like that? So we start with a list of what are the gifts that those that I love and admire that have gone before me, that I mourn, that I miss their presence, what have they offered me? In which those things I could really see myself starting to integrate into my life, starting to use my life. And as I'm doing them, maybe it will, it's like it sparks a moment of memory that triggers the love that I have for them. And maybe it triggers an emotional, a tear, but that's a good thing because it recognizes, it reminds you of the depth of love that you have. And that's a beautiful gift. But there may be things that we need to release, to change, to get rid of that are in the way of us creating our living legacy of life, of creating a life of meaning and intention. I like to call it, there may be things we have to prune, because gardening is a wonderful metaphor in life. And so there are trees and plants and things that benefit, like roses, which are a beautiful metaphor of spiritual involvement, that are benefit if we prune them. And in pruning, what we're doing is we're cutting off the parts that are dried up and useless, that are sucking energy from the plant and preventing it from blooming and having its fullness and living its full potential. And so the things that are no longer useful, we trim that off. So then the energy that comes up through the roots and back into the plant, it can give life to the strongest areas so that it can really demonstrate its fullness and its beauty and its potential. And we're the same way as human beings. There's a potential that is always dormant within us, waiting for us to ignite, to stimulate it, to consciously bring it out. And it may be that we need to prune something from our life. So here's another list. What are some of the things that you would benefit from to prune from your life? Now, it may be a thought process. What are some of the thoughts that I regularly go to that are not supporting my potential? Maybe it's negativity, maybe it's complaining, maybe it's gossiping. Maybe it's thoughts that I'm not good enough, pretty enough, smart enough, intelligent enough, that people in my family can't accomplish things. Maybe I've taken on things that other people have told me, whether intentional or not, but regularly enough that I've taken on as a belief system and that they have somehow taken root within me, that are interfering, that are blocking my potential. What are some of those things that you could benefit from releasing? It could be words that you use consistently that are not positive and supportive. So you think about our thoughts, our words, and our actions. Which ones support, enhance, and are productive, and which ones are negative, sucking energy, depleting, creating boundaries, holding us back? What are those things? Those are the things we don't need. They don't serve us anymore. Can I have the courage to choose to release them? It could be habits, behaviors. It may be that I need to set boundaries with certain relationships because they're not supportive and helpful and they suck energy from me. And I understand that. I have a narcissistic mother. I love her dearly. She's a very creative person. She has supported me in creating things in my life and exploring potential within me. But she's a very difficult presence to be with. And now she has dementia, and it's created an even more difficult and tragic experience in my relationship. So I'd be very careful in setting boundaries. How can I honor her with compassion as a human being, but also honor and love myself by not getting sucked into the drama or things that are not supportive. So what I'm talking about here is not easy, but it can be powerfully transforming. Do I love myself enough to set a path forward that is living life as legacy, of offering something of tremendous value to those that follow behind me, and even while I'm still here, setting an example for? So start pruning the things that no longer serve you. That's really important and necessary, because even if I have a positive intention, those things are going to block a portion, at the very least, of my potential of how I want to move forward. So, and at the end of this course today, one of the handouts I will send you is just a form. It's like a worksheet of pruning. Also, I'm going to be giving you a legacy gift worksheet that can kind of be just a way of identifying some of the things that are important to you and brainstorming those things. And to realize that some of the things that we may need to prune, shift, change, or transform could be what I call the F factor, and that's fear, forgiveness, and faith. Because faith is what I have set my foundation of belief system on. Where do I put my energy in my beliefs? Do I believe in the possibility of how I can live my life? That means, do I have the faith? Is where do I focus my energy on? Or am I focusing my energy on what I can't have, can't do, or can't be? Because that's faith too. So I may need to shift, transform, and change my underlying belief system. Where am I focusing my attention? So the next thing, once you're beginning to identify that, is to realize what stirs within me. What are the things that I have been ignoring that I've always wanted to do, or dreams that I had as a child or in my younger decades of life? Some of the things that I put aside because I thought it wasn't possible right now. And yet they're still in there. They're still alive in me somehow, wanting to come forward. I can begin to mix those, because I would bet that the things you admired and the love that you mourn support and honor the desires of your heart, the potential that's been dormant within you, the things you've always wanted to do, that those things would support you in bringing forth and manifesting a more vibrant, creative life. So we have to start asking ourselves questions like, how will I use these gifts, that's the legacy from the love that I mourn, to enhance or change my life? How will I use them? What's one thing that I can do right now to begin to integrate it in, to change the forward motion of my life? What's one thing that you can do? Maybe it's stepping out of a boundary and doing something that you haven't quite had the courage to do before. Maybe it's, okay, I'm going to start taking a walk every day. I'm going to get out and in nature and breathe and move my body more than I have been. Maybe it's, I'm going to change something in my diet. One thing that I can start doing different that supports my health and wholeness and nourishes me so that I have the energy and the vitality to move forward in more productive and creative ways. It's the beginning of transforming ourselves, of enhancing ourselves, in using the gift of discovery, of maybe aspects of who I've always been, but I forgot about, and that this legacy of my love has reminded me of. What are some of those things? What's going on in your mind? What's being triggered when I talk about those things? If you want to share them in the chat, please do. And so, as I considered my son's life, what he offered me, I started to come to terms that in this realization that I'm no longer the person that I was before, that grief itself, or the challenges of life, have shifted something in us, that have changed us at the core, and we may not know it yet, but this process now is coming to terms with accepting it and becoming, living my new self. So you want to explore some deeper questions within yourself. What do I want to be doing that allows me to be my greater potential? That allows me to begin living my life as a legacy, knowing that it is making a difference in the lives of others. I'm not doing it to make a difference, because in doing it, I'm making a difference for myself. But I'm living larger. The ripple effect of my presence is reaching out to a greater extent. And I may never know or see the impact that it makes. And that doesn't matter, because how I live my life will make a difference no matter what. Those are the things we begin to be grateful for. And gratitude is a tremendous gift in presence. And we live our life as legacy, I believe, when we begin to see gratitude in more of our life experience. You know, yesterday was an interesting day, April Fools. I live in Cincinnati, and Tuesday it was 73 degrees here. Yesterday it was 34 and it snowed. And I thought, what a practical joke Mother Nature gave us to let us think that winter was over. And I realized that, you know, that's what life is. It's a metaphor for life. You know, just when we think there's this pattern of things we can count on, something happens that throws, you know, a big loop or a gaffu into it, and we have to make an adjustment. It may be big, it may be small, it may, you know, just be a little hiccup, or it may just, you know, knock us to our knees. But whatever it is, as we get the strength of living our legacy, we begin to consciously create each day with meaning and intention. I want to share with you a little story that I shared it in my book, and it had a great impact on me when I was looking at how I wanted to live my life. And you may have heard this before, and if not, or if you have, just hope that it reminds you of its significance. And it's about a young woman who went to her grandmother and told her about her life and how things were so hard for her. And, you know, we could relate. Life can be hard, right? And she didn't know how she was going to make it, and she wanted to give up. You know, it was just too painful. We've all been there, I'm sure. She was tired of fighting and struggling, and it seemed that there was this one problem after another, and as soon as she solved one, there'd be another problem. And it was like, why is life so hard? How do I get through this? And her grandmother took her to the kitchen, and she filled 3 pots of water, and she placed it on a high fire. And as soon as the pots came to boil, she put something in each one. The first pot, she placed carrots. In the second pot, she placed eggs. In the third pot, she placed ground coffee beans. And she let them sit and boil without saying a word, and in about 20 minutes, she turned off the burners. She fished the carrots out, and she placed them in a bowl. She pulled the eggs out, she placed them in a bowl, and then she ladled the coffee out and put it into a mug. Turning to her granddaughter, she asked, "Tell me what you see." "Eggs, carrots, and coffee," she replied. duh. And her grandmother brought her closer and asked her to feel the carrots, and she did, and she noticed they were soft. And the grandmother then asked her to take an egg and break it. And after pulling off the shell, she observed the hard-boiled egg, right? We would know that. And finally, the grandmother asked the granddaughter to sip the coffee, and the granddaughter smiled, and she said it tasted rich, and the aroma was wonderful. And then she asked, what does this mean, grandmother? And the grandmother explained that each of these objects had faced the same adversity. Boiling water. Each reacted differently. The carrot went in strong and hard and unrelenting. However, after being subjected to the boiling water, it softened and it became weak. The egg had been fragile. Its inner shell had been protecting the liquid inside. But after sitting in boiling water, the inside became hardened. And the ground coffee beans were unique because after they were boiled in water, they changed the water. And so the grandmother asked her granddaughter, which are you? Interesting question, right? The story has rich meaning when applied to our lives, because grief can be like that. Painful challenges in life can be like the boiling water that we've been thrown into. It's excruciatingly painful, but it has the potential to change us at depth. So what can we choose? How we will allow the impact on who we are to be changed. Ask yourself, which are you? How you choose to live your life legacy will be the outer realization of your choice. So consider from a place of deep awareness and contemplation how you will allow grief, sadness, or loss, tremendous challenge in life to change you. Not if grief or pain and loss will change you, because it will change you. You can decide if it will change you unconsciously without your input, or if you'll use it as a rich and empowering gift that allows you and offers you to be enhanced and transformed, just like a chrysalis becomes a butterfly. You don't think the caterpillar knew when it was, triggered to create this cocoon, this chrysalis, to go inside and lock itself in, that it was going to be transformed and come out a butterfly? And so this process that we allow ourselves to go through is allowing us to be transformed. We're choosing it intentionally. Grief enters into the process of our lives because it has no choice. Something happened. But instead of fighting the process or resisting it, we can embrace it to become the unique and beautiful expression that it has divinely designed us to become within us. And so that can be you. No matter what life has put into your experience. We're all butterflies waiting to be released to fly freely. It's one of my favorite words. Is, my personal email, I'm just telling you, is flying free now. So grief can be our catalyst, right? And it will always live as a part of who you are now. So don't think of it as something as bad, but something that enhances you, that gives you depth. It will be up to you to choose how it will define you and how well you use it to live a meaningful life because of it. To move forward with new meaning for life. Fully conscious of the legacy that you're living each day, starting right now. And so the other hand up I'm going to offer you is a Wheel of Life worksheet. And it's looking at every area of your life, breaking it down, because it's not just one thing that we do, but there's so many just aspects of who we are in our life. And just taking one at a time and looking at where am I at in satisfaction and happiness. And as I integrate some of the things I've learned about myself, what do I admire that I want of others that I want to integrate in my life, what is something that I can do in that part of my life that I can begin to change, to shift, to transform. And what do I want it to be? And so this could be a year-long process, one thing at a time. But each thing that we're working on, each day, I'm focusing on doing something that's productive, helpful, creative, that makes a difference. So I'm living my legacy of life every day. Remember, thoughts of gratitude provide us with moments of grace and the time we need to move forward one day at a time. So find some sense of gratitude in each day too, because it will keep us on focus. It will keep us on track. You know, I think about my son, Justin, my little boy, that his name Justin, he was born December 14th, and the family joke was he was born just in time for Christmas. So I think of my smiling little boy, born just in time for Christmas, who will always be my angel that inspires me, encourages me, and challenges me to be fearless, present, and aware in the moment of life happening. To be like he was, gregarious, and, you know, I may still do what he did. One of the things on his bucket list that he did was, you know, to jump out of an airplane and with a parachute, obviously. And the absolute incredible joy and exhilaration he experienced from doing that. You know, just to live life on the edge, I want to do that because of him. He will be my inspiration to be willing to step out of the boundaries of my self-imposed comfort zone each day. And every day it might be a little different. You know, it's how can I honor myself based on today's situation? Loving and honoring myself, self-care in myself. It's the forever gift that I realize is a blessing from within this human experience of grief. So how will you live your life legacy? What are some of the things that you will do, that you will change, transform, and being willing to be flexible in the moment that I think I'm moving in this direction. I think that I want to incorporate this thing. But as I move forward and I learn more, I experience more, I want to be flexible enough to adapt and to adjust. Because as I go, I learn perhaps that there's even a better option, a better direction, that I can expand my potential even more than I ever thought possible. And one thing at a time. You know, I look at my life as I began to say, what do I want to do? Well, I had to re-educate myself for some things. So I went back to school, I went to seminary, I got ordained. I had the courage to step out to be a spiritual educator. I began leading women's retreats because I was compelled to do so, to create something that I didn't know what I was doing, but I invited others into my experience. So who can you invite to join you? Maybe there's people that you admire that are doing something you'd like to be doing. So look at how they do it. Ask if you can interview them. What are some of the things that would be helpful for me that I need to do to be able to shift in that direction? One thing at a time, we move forward and transform things. At some point, I was compelled to know that I needed to write a book. I needed to write the story of my grief experience around my son. And so last year I did that. And then I was compelled to create an online course based on that. How do you go deeper? I did that. I have made a commitment to say yes to every time I'm asked to do an interview. I said yes to Mia when she said, would you like to be a guest presenter in this course? Everything I'm doing, I'm creating my living will and testament, my living legacy. And one of the things that I want to leave you with is one of the realizations that I knew that just in writing my book and sharing more of my story was making a difference is when my older son, Ryan, who turns 40 this year, I can't believe it, when he read my book, he said, I went to bed one night and I thought I would read a couple of chapters and I couldn't put it down. And I was up until 4 in the morning reading that book. And he said, I I had to start highlighting things. He said, Mom, I had no idea what your experience had been. I had no idea the things that you offer that could help people. And he said, and you have made me think about my life and what I want to do, and the things that I've held back, I'm not going to do anymore. And he took a quote and he put it on his desktop, and it says, every day I consider how I want to show up, what I want to be doing, because I want to be reminded of that. And that's how we live our legacy, one day at a time. Every day ask yourself, how will I show up? What will I do that makes a difference? It might sound simple, but it takes courage and it's challenging. But our perseverance, our willingness to honor and love ourselves and those that we love and admire, that we mourn, that have passed on from this life, we honor them by how we choose to live. So I don't know if anybody has any questions, if you'd like to share anything in the chat. I really like to be able to support you. It's a challenging experience doing this course without having a face-to-face interaction with people. But I'm happy to respond to anybody if you have any questions. There will be some handouts. If you email me at unravelinggrief@gmail.com, I will send you handouts that can support you in having some worksheets to move forward in creating your living life legacy. And so if there aren't any questions, maybe what I'll do is just end with a meditation. Okay, let's see. The email address again, I'll just go ahead and type it in. Unravelinggrief, as one word, @gmail.com. And I will send you some handouts. I really admire and support each of you that are willing to show up, to take to heart anything that I've offered you. I hope that it helps you. And, just, it never hurts for us to step back and observe and take a new look at our life. How am I living? Am I really living from the place of creative expression that I want to be? Am I living the potential that I know is alive within me? And what is something that I'm willing to shift? It's hard to break old habits and routines and behaviors. So it has to start consciously with what I recognize I would benefit from making a change. And one day at a time, that shift creates new habits, new behaviors, new routines. And then we can look back, a week, a month, 6 months, a year, and go, wow, look at how that's changed me, my experience. I never knew that it was possible. I probably will take you to places beyond what you think in this moment now. So life is always going to be a challenge. There will always be things that are taken from us, and sometimes we choose to remove them from us because we recognize the value of it. And it can take courage to do that, even if it's just clearing out and reorganizing a closet or a drawer. That's shifting the energy. Without knowing it, I'm beginning to change my life just by clearing things one closet, one room at a time. Am I living the way that I want to? Mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually? Am I creating the world around me that nourishes me and allows me to have all the tools and resources I need to move forward? If not, what can I change? What am I willing to do different? What do I want to invite into my life? What do I need to do to enhance and improve, educate, develop myself more? We are an ongoing process of development until the last breath we take. So, I just want to take a few minutes, maybe just to close with a meditation. So, I realize that some of you may not be to do this, but just to listen and just allow that to be absorbed into your mind and feel the experience and know that you're absorbing it. So just close your eyes and take a deep breath to breathe in the awareness of your breath, to feel your breath as it supports your life, supports the activity of who you are as a living, breathing expression of the creative life that we may call God, but we also may just call Source, the universal essence that lives through us, in and as us, as our expression of who we are. And so I feel great gratitude as I breathe in deeply. I feel that breath that integrates into every cell of my being, that animates me. I feel it expanding in me. And I feel the gratitude for it. I feel the gratitude tingling in every little cell of my being. And as I consciously exhale, I release anything and everything, excuse me, that is not one with my beautiful, creative, expressive self. I release anything that blocks the energy, the vibration that allows me to express my fullness, that allows my body to express its wholeness. Energetically and vibrationally, I begin to release those things now. And maybe physically and consciously, I will do that in the present moment, moving forward later. For I only breathe in and accept those things that support my fullness, my wholeness, the vibrancy of my life, the expression of my full potential. I only breathe in all those things that vibrate what I need to be. And as I take in a deeper breath, I breathe in and I shift from my head into my heart space. And I breathe through my heart, through the intelligence of the heart, the unconditional love that is who I am within me. And I know that that love is offering me everything I need to know, everything that can support, enhance, and transform me to thrive at the very highest level. And so I invite the awareness of what it is that I need to know to come into my conscious thoughts now. And I capture them. I allow them to be integrated and absorbed into who I am so that I'll recall them later. Knowing that those things will continue to flow into my mind, into my conscious awareness, all the things that support me, that enhance me, that expand who I am, that allow me to thrive, and to begin living consciously my living legacy in all its fullness, from this moment, from this breath, one day at a time. I take in a deep breath, I let it go, open my eyes, and I invite you to take a moment to capture any thoughts that came during that. Any thoughts that you had that would support and enhance you moving forward with intention to thrive. Because that's what living our life legacy is. It's thriving at the highest level possible. So I'm talking to Mia about offering some other classes moving forward, so I hope to connect with you again. Otherwise, you can go to my website, www.unityawakeningways.org, and or email me, and I look forward to connecting you in new ways and offer you what I can. And please do email me so I can send you some supportive handouts. I hope you have a wonderful day. Remember to breathe, and remember that every day I am creating a living legacy, no matter what kind of boiling water I found myself in. Blessing.